Back on News at Prime, thanks for staying on. A new study reveals that 1 in 3 South Africans has never heard of artificial intelligence. The knowledge gap is not merely a statistic, but it's about technological awareness. It is a direct threat to growth, social equity, and effective governance. For policymakers, this creates an urgent mandate to craft forward-thinking strategies that harness AI's potential for economic development while also launching a massive public awareness campaign. Let's unpack what that actually would entail. We have research fellow at the University of Cape Town, Dr. Rachel Adams. Dr. Adams, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. Well, lawmakers have published what they call the National AI Policy Framework. Are they putting the cart before the horse, so to speak?
Well, I don't think so. I think when they set out to publish the policy framework, they set out to do a really kind of deliberate and inclusive participatory process. And this is something we're really looking for when governments are developing national AI strategies. So the framework was published in order to gather opinions from various stakeholders across the country, to gather research and evidence about what are the key things that we should be focusing on. I think many African governments have rushed in to drafting and publishing a national AI strategy. So I think South Africa doing this in this more deliberative way is in fact a good thing.
What are the things we should be focusing on?
Well, one of the things, so we have, of course, just published this survey. This was a survey that we did with the Human Sciences Research Council in South Africa, who've been doing this social attitudes of South Africans survey for a number of years. And we realized that across the African continent, we actually had no deep, rigorous evidence, statistics around what do Africans think about artificial intelligence. So focusing in on South Africa, we launched this survey where we did over 3,000 face-to-face interviews with South Africans of all walks of life and all language groups, and asked them different questions about what do they think of artificial intelligence, what are their biggest concerns, where do they get their information about artificial intelligence from? And going back to the national AI policy, one of the things that we know is really important for this policy is that it needs to include meaningful public awareness and AI literacy programs. So yes, our headline finding was 1 in 3 South Africans have never heard of artificial intelligence, but it's actually a little bit more stark than that, because 37% have never heard of it, 36% have heard of it but don't know what it is. So it's actually 2 out of 3 South Africans have no kind of meaningful understanding of what this technology is and the impact it's having on their lives, which is something we really need to look into quite carefully.
Those who do know about it, their perception of impact, is it in line with, I suppose, what they should be thinking about the impact of AI? Because, I mean, if you look, many South Africans, any kind of intervention that you're introducing, be it technological intervention, be it programs that you're bringing as far as education is concerned, for many young people especially, they would want to understand whether this is going to create employment for me, better economic prospects.
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly the biggest concern that we found in this report is that almost 70% of South Africans are worried about job displacement, but worried about it in quite vague terms. And this is where it becomes really important to have an understanding of how AI may be being used within your workplace, or maybe affecting the kind of employment that you're looking for, maybe impacting on your livelihoods. Where people know about these kind of things, they're able to better prepare. Interestingly, our findings were that almost half of South Africans feel fairly positive about AI. They think it could have quite a beneficial impact in areas like health, education, even creating new jobs. But while 50% or around 50% felt that way, another 40% really didn't know. So we're at a really kind of emerging early stage around what public opinion on these issues are. There's a lot of ambiguity, and there's really clearly a need for people to have much more of a sense of what this technology is about, how it may be impacting their daily lives, and be able to come to their own informed opinions about it.
Yeah. Talking about how it affects their daily life, I mean, if top of mind, I think of one kind of program that is used, AI program that is used in South Africa extensively would be Grok, on X. Do people really trust Grok and the institutions that are behind Grok and the kind of information that it brings out?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've really kind of nailed in on one of the really important ones, which is around misinformation and the way in which artificial intelligence, particularly new generative AI technologies like ChatGPT or others that can produce content, video content, stories, images, and produce them and circulate them at scale. If people don't have an understanding or don't have a kind of awareness of, is this real, is this AI generated, then they're much more vulnerable to being manipulated by these kinds of stories. And this becomes, of course, really, really critical in, for example, a run-up to elections.
And so do we have a sense then from the people that they require maybe a little bit more guardrails that should be in place? I mean, how do they still feel about human oversight over these systems?
Yeah, one of the questions we asked people was where do we need guardrails? Are there kind of limitations for how companies and governments can and should be using artificial intelligence? And certainly unsupervised use of AI, particularly in critical high-risk areas like health, financing, access to social grants, even education was something that came up quite a lot. The other area was their children using AI online or not knowing whether children were being exposed to AI, and a lot of worry and concerns around that, as well as, of course, job displacement being the really big one.
What's the opportunity here for policymakers? What's the opportunity for tech companies, particularly as we are defining the way forward in the use of AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think always when you have concrete evidence in front of you, that's a really, really useful set of information for policymakers to know, okay, we really need to prioritize public literacy, AI awareness programs. One of the other findings that we came to was that 40% of people get their information about AI through algorithmically determined channels, so social media, and only 7% get their information about AI through formal learning, whether at their workplace or in schools. So I think the major opportunity or the major kind of challenge really that we face is thinking about how do we design meaningful, relevant awareness programs that teach people about artificial intelligence in terms that are readily understandable and meaningful to them, and in channels that are accessible to them.
Yeah, is that expensive? I mean, is there a cost attached to that?
Well, of course, there's a cost attached to any kind of policy implementation, but you could think about how you could roll out programs within existing institutions. You could mandate companies of a certain size to be teaching or providing upskilling programs, particularly for people in positions that are most immediately vulnerable to job displacement. I think universities play a really, really important role, particularly technical universities that are really about getting students into the job market, for preparing that already kind of technically aware and technically excited population around how to anticipate the kind of ways in which AI may impact their access to jobs, and also kind of teach them about the kind of key areas and concepts.
Dr. Rachel Adams, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for your intervention this evening. Research fellow at the University of Cape Town. 2 in 3 South Africans not really clued up as to what artificial intelligence is really all about, but creating an opportunity, I guess, for policymakers and those in spaces of tech to create more awareness about the benefits, the impact, and certainly how to use it more